Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, where every day I speak with a different leader about how technology is transforming their industry. Now, I have had a stressful couple of weeks here at Tech Blog Writer Towers, and for me to tell you why, I need to take you back in time to where my journey first began. So in April 2013, it was announced that LinkedIn had purchased Pulse from Alfonso Labs for $90 million. And in the beginning of November 13, version 4 was launched, integrating Pulse and LinkedIn. And what this essentially meant was busy professionals and business leaders could share their industry insights and expertise by documenting and sharing their experiences with others in their industry. And from that moment, I began following in the footsteps of somebody called John White, who was enjoying incredible success on the platform, and his articles were picking up millions of views, but more importantly, fantastic engagement. And we later became friends, and I even enjoyed a cold beer with him in Denver a few years later. But during that time, each morning I would leave my home at 7 a.m. in the morning and not return home till 6:30 p.m. But I made the most of my time and found myself reading, watching, listening and digesting content made by Gary Vaynerchuk. But I didn't want to be that guy that listened to all the content but didn't actually do anything about it. So I decided to take his advice and run with it. And as a result of that, I created my very own side hustle from 8 p.m. till midnight. I ended up winning a LinkedIn Top Voice Award, which slowly started changing everything. And then I ended up leaving my day job behind. But this is where things go crazy, because a few years later, I found myself at the Wynn Hotel in Vegas, sat down with Gary Vaynerchuk, the man that inspired me to follow my dream. So now you know my backstory, I want you to imagine that you're in my shoes. And the guy that has been the soundtrack to your commute when you had a day job is now in the same room as you. And you're not only shaking his hand, but other people like David Rock, or DRocks as he's known, who was also an inspiration to me, he's in the same room as well. So I get set up, record a great conversation, and get the chance to thank Gary Vaynerchuk personally. But then my Audacity recording crashed midway through the save process. And despite searching YouTube and copious amounts of Googling, it was time to admit that that content was unrecoverable. But hey, I'm a pro. I have an external backup mic. But guess what? I had turned it on, but it seems that the nerves got the better of me and I hadn't actually hit record. I was the victim of a catalogue of errors, all my own. But those feelings of regret that Gary Vee always talks about suddenly had a whole new meaning to me. But as the eternal optimist, I thought, you know what? Maybe it just wasn't meant to be, and I should be happy that I got a chance to meet him in person, share a private moment and thank him. Every cloud has a silver lining, as they say. But this is where DRocks came to the rescue. A few Instagram DMs and emails later, he graciously shared his footage with me. The only downside is the audio was coming from Gary's lapel mic, so my audio is not great. But Gary's valuable message is crystal clear. So if you would like to be a fly on the wall and hear what happened when I met Gary Vaynerchuk, here's your chance. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Vegas so you can hear me talk about tech, entrepreneurship, life and so much more with Gary Vaynerchuk. So welcome to the show, Gary. You often talk about how everyone judges people by their current success. Now, we might have a few people listening that just know Gary Vee is the guy that has over 10 million online followers and wants to buy the jets, thinking, I want what he has, but want it right now, and they're struggling to progress forward on their path. For those people, can you tell me more about your journey, your struggles, your challenges, and your moments where you wanted to give up, and how actually those moments actually shaped you and created your success?
It's an interesting thing because I think that so much of who I am today is the byproduct of the great fortune of finding what I love and being good at it, which is not something that everybody finds. So just to address the last part, I never want to come on here and not be authentic. There's never been a day since I started my career which was the day after school, college, at my dad's liquor store. But then 8 years earlier, when I was a stock boy in that liquor store, there was never a day where I ever considered even remotely close to quitting. There are plenty of I think somebody who truly finds what they're great at and what they love have terrible days at the micro level all the time. There's never been any close momentum in my mind of, I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. I don't want to do this. There's some things I want to do. So look, I was born in the Soviet Union. I came to the States when I was 3. We were very poor, 8 family members in a studio apartment, poor, not buying anything but food, clothes, and shelter, and none of the 3 of them were fancy. Mm-hmm. I grew up very, very humbly, was a very entrepreneurial kid, lemonade stands, baseball cards. Eventually got into my dad's liquor store. My dad, worked every minute of my childhood until he was able to save up and buy a liquor store in New Jersey. I learned a lot in the sports card business of collecting, and once I understood at 16 that people collected wine, I was able to connect 2 passions of mine, which was, 1, how do I give back to my incredible parents who, really did a lot for me, and 2, this real love of flipping, right? Like buying, seeing things go up. I understand that mentality. Launched one of the first e-commerce wine businesses in America in 1996, long before most people did. Was a pioneer in email and Google search and YouTube and .com marketing. And then when my wine show started on YouTube, was the first time people started to ever hear of me, really outside the wine and spirits business world. Yeah. And then Twitter, I became one of the fast movers on that and became one of the most followed people on that platform, and that was a big play for me. And then I started a marketing agency with my brother in 2009 called Vaynermedia, and that's when the whole Vayner thing started. Lots of companies, lots of entrepreneurial ventures over the last decade. Every single day, today, 7 to 10 pretty substantial headache. I manage 1,000 people, London, New York, LA, this fall, Singapore. So it's a global company. I have multiple companies under the VaynerX umbrella. So Vaynermedia, 1:37 p.m., Pure Wow, which are publishing companies, Vayner Speakers, a speaking bureau, Tracer, an ad platform, tech platform. So, for anybody who's listening, people get close to quitting when people overextend themselves financially and get into trouble, when somebody they love very dearly gets sick, or when they're just genuinely not doing something they enjoy and they're doing it for the money. The reason so many people burn out is because they're doing it for the money. Yeah. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm grateful that what I'm good at and what I love creates financial upside, but Jesus, I'd be super pumped making $63,000 a year buying stuff at garage sales and flipping them on eBay. That's probably the closest I ever get to thinking about giving it all up. I sometimes do think, what would it be like to be a full-time garage sailor? Other than that, I'm really not joking. It's funny, the other day I was thinking about it, I was like, I may actually, it's funny that that's where my brain went. I said, I might actually do that one day. That would freak everybody out. And then I'm like, wow, I'm probably at a place now that if I did that, then inevitably there'd be the Netflix show. It would just I would start over and it would take me I think about that stuff. I'm like, I'd probably be bigger than ever because I'd be a motivation to millions. He gave it all up to do what he loved most, going through people's trash in their backyard on a Saturday. I think happiness needs to become more of the ROI. And I think if you're a true bred entrepreneur, not the current version, because there's so many people right now that want to be an entrepreneur because it's cool. Yeah. But if you're a true bred entrepreneur, you almost have no other option. To me, getting a job feels exactly like you telling me right now to go to outer space and jump off the moon. It's completely not in the cards. And so what else are you gonna do?
So when you look back now, especially at just how far you've come, what do you think that you've done differently that's helped you succeed where so many others have failed?
I'm obsessed with giving more than I take, and I'm completely and utterly not driven by money. And I think that is during a time where everything's being documented and people are watching. I think that I've gotten extra credit for being a human being who's a good businessman, but wants to be a better person.
We're all navigating through the uncharted digital waters now, trying to make sense and get ahead in an era of exponential change. So how do you approach business challenges personally, especially with so much technological change across the landscape?
Easily, because for me, that is the norm, right? Yeah. I'm an extreme advocate and loud voice of embrace change, invest in the future, to me, as long as I'm making payroll, then I'm achieving what I need to be doing. So I'm not maximizing profit on a yearly basis, which allows me to invest, which allows me to grow. And that's what I'm passionate about. And so, to me, if you are not recognizing that technology is going to put you out of business, then you are very naive. My friends here, Jason, we're doing stuff in the sports card world. It's really his world. It's a passion of mine. I've gotten rebooted in it. We're talking about, I was thinking about wholesalers just now, people that buy the cards from the manufacturers and then resell them. They're making so much margin on the hot product that, if you just think about what technology can do and where it's going, like anybody in the middle, a bookstore's in the middle, Toys R Us is in the middle, like anybody in the middle, from the person that makes the product to the person that consumes the product, anybody in the middle is vulnerable and technology is coming after you. And so I highly recommend, if you're in the middle, that you pay attention to that statement.
So how do you stay hungry though? And do you fear the day that when you do it, inevitably buy the Jets, that you'll think, now what?
Look, buying the Jets, winning 7 Super Bowls, because I think the Patriots now have 6, winning 7 Super Bowls is going to, by the time I view myself buying the Jets in my 70s because I genuinely believe the way I'm creating wealth is slow and steady. So, no, I don't worry about that at all. I think I'm going to be a mature man by the time I buy the Jets, and I think I'll be extraordinarily, once I come off the high of actually pulling something off like that and actually saying I was going to do it for 50 years to the public and having all the accolades. That is going to be a monumental day. I will absolutely trend on Twitter that day. Once I get down from that high for 24 hours, I'm going to be extremely focused on trying to win a Super Bowl. So, I think the great thing about somebody who leads out in front and wants to do things, one thing that I'm trying to get better at as I get older is smelling the roses, but I'm not really good at it. And I feel like I will celebrate way less than anybody understands when I'm able to make that transaction.
So for the younger people listening that are passionate and hungry for success, but they want it right now, how can they learn to overcome the impatience and focus on the actual long game?
By first recognizing that their parents screwed up and society screwed up, and they created a framework that creates an unbelievable sense of entitlement, and recognizing that anything special takes time and takes work. It's very hard. Yeah. It's like the amount of people that take diet pills and sign up for quick fix health benefits grossly outweigh the people that eat right and exercise right every day. And that's what happens in business. Everybody thinks there's a course, a shortcut. I'm going to make all my money in Bitcoin and be out and be a billionaire next year. A shortcut mentality is inherently in people. I believe it's because they worry too much about other people's judgment. Patience is unbelievably not on the pedestal that it should be. It's one of the reasons I try to put it on a pedestal. Recognizing the problem is step one. 99% of the people that are consuming this content, audio or video right now, are grossly impatient.
It's something that on a much lower level than yourself that I get as well. I get a lot of emails from people saying, well, how can I do exactly what you've done, Neil? And I'll say, well, a daily tech podcast is 365 podcasts against your name here. 2 articles a week becomes, 100.
And think about all the years where you had to study to know even what you're talking about and
yeah.
Right? Just years and years, I've been doing business since I was 6 years old for real. Not kind of real. Kind of like I'm an athlete real. 80% of my leisure time as a kid was shoveling snow. And by the way, you can hear shoveling snow. What you don't know is ringing a doorbell, trying to sell somebody on giving you $10 to shovel their snow, sensing when you can ask for $20 or $5. Taking 5 when you wanted 10 because the last 6 houses didn't say yes, and it's getting later at night. and then actually doing it. Then actually having, while you're like literally, I've got a vision in my head right now of shoveling snow on people's decks while watching my core friends build snowmen and throw snowballs at each other just 100 yards away. That takes a sense of discipline and passion for work and business that most people don't grow up with. So here I sit at 43 years old, not old, but not necessarily a kid like so many people entering. I'm now 35 full years into 100% pot committed business thinking. I went to school thinking how to sell candy. I went to school thinking how to sell cards. I didn't go there trying to learn calculus. And so, that whole 10,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell thing, I don't know where I'm at now, but it's a lot.
Well, like I said a few moments ago, I was the IT guy by day in an office listening and reading your content during my hour-long commute and then working on a side hustle from 8 till 12 every night. But by doing that, making the most of LinkedIn Pulse, when it was very first released, I was named the #2 tech writer on the whole of LinkedIn. And now another 4 years later, I'm sat here talking to the guy that made it all possible and inspired me to go chase my dream. So to someone listening to this podcast, this is why I do podcasts as well, because I think it's such a powerful format. We've got listeners in 165 countries that might be listening to this week, next week, a month, a year, 5 years from now. To those people that has a comfortable life, doing a job that they despise though, living for the weekend, questioning how they lost their way, ended up settling, but convinced themselves that they're too old, too institutionalised now to do anything about it. What would you say to those people?
They're crazy. Yeah. They're just, it blows my mind that somebody who's 58 years old doesn't realize that they're going to live for another 50 years, which means they're maybe at halftime. Yeah. But here's the problem. Every 58-year-old that is in the system right now grew up that when they were a kid, their grandparents were dying at 58. Yeah. So people use history instead of the future to make their decisions, and that's a huge mistake because you're not going into a time machine, but you are going to be living going forward. And so the impracticality of deploying what happened in the past as the framework to you is a mistake. And I can't be more passionate than to try to get 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds to realize if one person's done it, then you can too. And so if that's the Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Vera Wang, or Sidney Frank, who started Grey Goose at 72 or 78 years old, I just don't understand why people are giving up when they're unhappy when the internet now exists. This is where I think people get caught. If you're 60, you grew up the first 40 years of your life without the internet. Yeah. And so you don't actually calibrate the power and the opportunity that is the internet to start your podcast around Star Trek or gardening or the side hustles that become careers that people don't believe, that obviously I believe, and obviously that you've lived.
Now, I'm also fascinated by how technology continues to transform our lives. I'm so glad you mentioned the internet there, because I'm also fascinated by the past. And I recently saw a video of Bill Gates, and he was being mocked on the Letterman show back in 1995, where he said the internet would change the world. He gave his vision, and he was mocked accordingly. And equally, David Bowie was mocked by Jeremy Paxman when he tried to do the same. So you have a reputation of having a radar that knows what platform is going to blow up next. But now we have 5G, IoT, AI, AR, voice search, blockchain, and crypto, which is exploding while we're talking right now, all waiting on the horizon to change the game again. I mean, is there anything that particularly excites you?
5G excites me. Yeah. I don't think people actually understand what that infrastructure is. When you don't have that lapse in technology because of the speed of the framework and the fiber, you're talking, I'll be honest with you, it excites me because I think of it as like when we built the highways in America. Like, we didn't necessarily understand all the things that were going to happen around the suburbs, the demise of cities for a couple of decades, and obviously now they're back. But I don't think people understand what 5G technology actually means and how that changes the medical arena. You're going to have physicians performing surgery on people that are millions of miles away, because they're the best surgeon in the world for this surgery, and because there's no lapse between their hand movements and the robot that's going to be on your body, that's their hands, since there's no lag, there is no fear. I mean, this is really quite crazy, actually. If you have some crazy, this is an extreme example. And by the way, autonomous cars only become real because of 5G.
Yeah.
Because once you eliminate the lag, you eliminate the percentage of issue. But the one that I can't stop thinking about is the surgeon thing, which is for example, one thing 5G will allow, for everybody who's listening, is no lapse in the information exchange. So again, I'm in Peru, I'm the best surgeon in the world for this rare ruptured appendix thing, and it's 2 a.m, but I get called from a New York hospital because I'm affiliated by and associated with and compensated by, and I get up, take a quick shower and go into this room in my apartment, put on my gloves, turn on the thing, and start performing the surgery as if I'm in the room in New York City, and I say that, that's incredible. I mean, I expect to give tons of keynotes a day in hologram form where I get half the price I get being full human, but 5G is gonna make that happen because I'm gonna be giving the keynote right here, but I'm gonna be simulcast in hologram form all across the world. But that's what's gonna happen. Ed Sheeran just made a lot more money. When hologram technology with 5G infrastructure gets that place, and if he's in Madison Square Garden, but I can be in Rome, and the hologram is that advanced, and the lag time of everything he does in New York, I'm feeling, it starts getting really interesting. What pay-per-view's cute, but what about if you can go to arena and it feels like you're actually watching McGregor fight because the 5G infrastructure is in such a place that there's no lag between we watching him in hologram form in the octagon in Afghanistan while it's actually happening live in Las Vegas. I mean, we're talking about game-changing infrastructure. Look, the blockchain is game-changing infrastructure. Cryptocurrency is like search engines. There's gonna be 1 billion that go to zero, and there'll be Google, and there'll be, Yahoo and Bing still work, by the way. And so whether Bitcoin is Google or Schmitcoin or Schmincoin or Doge or, Litecoin or whatever it may be, I have no idea. But blockchain's an incredible technology. Look, AI is clearly unbelievable. I mean, all of it's super fun. AR, VR, it's all gonna happen. Crazy a fax machine was for you and I.
You still see them in some places.
Yeah, on eBay, on the flip. Look, I think, as an antique, but I mean, do you remember how crazy a beeper was?
Yeah.
Or a wireless phone in my house? I mean, I lost my mind. I could watch the football game and be on the phone with my friend. That was nuts, because it wasn't attached to the wall in the kitchen like mine was. Crazy.
Now, I've watched you for many years, and you've said for a long time now that the currency in business now is attention.
Yes.
Now, there is a new privacy-based browser called Brave. I'm not sure if you've even heard of it.
I have not.
It's trying to shake up the entire ad industry by returning 70% of all ad revenue share to the users. And
this has forever been a thesis.
Yeah.
I don't think people care. I think people care about privacy in theory.
Yeah.
But then don't live it. I think people going and using Brave versus Google, they care about the product. So if Brave's as good as Google and giving back 70 cents on the dollar, maybe you got something now. But the problem is just giving back, people don't choose price.
Yeah.
People don't choose money as much as people think. People choose convenience. People choose quality. People choose a lot of things over money. And they definitely don't choose privacy. Humans don't care about privacy. And by the way, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
And do you think that's a fair trade, convenience over privacy? Is that a fair trade?
Of course, because nobody does anything with the privacy.
Yeah.
Everybody, as long as your kids aren't getting killed and nobody's stealing your money, you care far less. And by the way, once we all realize we don't have privacy, we're all gonna become more authentic humans. Everything that is bad in society is the stuff that's hidden. The skeletons in all the five of us in this room's closets and everybody listening, those are the bad things.
Now, you inspire people all over the world every day across multiple channels online. But I've got to ask, what inspires you, both here and in the past?
Optimism.
Yeah.
Optimism inspires me. People who have very little, who have severe challenges, and persevere. Maybe this is where I'm so affected by my mother. My mother lost her mother when she was 5. She grew up in the depths of Soviet communist Russia. Her father went to jail for a decade. She's the most optimistic person I know. Yeah. And when people come up to me and they're like, oh, I have it, so I'm like, I always just think about my mom. She's so positive, so optimistic, and she had such shit as a child. Yeah.
Now, finally, Gary, I don't want to end on a downer, but you often talk about how people should...
Real quick.
Yeah.
I don't think what I just said about my mom's a downer, and I think it's an interesting insight. I actually think adversity is the great gift in our society. And I think that if you really look at who's upset for real, it's the people that grew up entitled and are then zoo animals when they go into society because they were so overcoddled, not the ones that have chips on their shoulders and had a lot of negativity.
Absolutely, completely with you on that. Now, finally, Gary, I don't want to end on a downer, but like I said, you do often talk about how people should speak to people at the end of their lives and how they share regrets.
Yes.
So if someone was to visit you in a nursing home 40 years from now, hopefully longer, and come to you searching for those same answers, what is the alternative narrative that you'd hope to give them and what you want to be remembered for?
Look, I want to be remembered as somebody who gave more than he took and somebody who redefined what an alpha male could look like and the things that he would talk about, you know? I want to put words like kindness and gratitude and empathy on a pedestal as strengths, not weaknesses. So I want to be admired. I want to be admired because I gave, not because I took. And that's what I would tell any kid when I'm 98, right? If you can figure out how to give and eliminate expectations of others, you will forever be happy because you won't be at the mercy of anybody. And you will be so fulfilled with the admiration of other human beings that you can live a really successful and happy life.
That's a beautiful moment to end on. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to me, Gary.
I think I should point out here that this conversation was recorded 50 minutes before Gary was about to go on stage in front of 3,500 people. So I cannot thank him enough for taking the time to speak with me. Because I know that if I was about to go on stage in front of 3,500 people, the last person I would want to speak with is a Brit podcaster. And I also need to thank David Rock, aka DRocks, as most of you know him. It was only because of him answering my desperate requests that we were able to salvage the interview. On the blog post that's going to accompany this podcast episode on my tech site over at techblogwriter.co.uk, I'm going to post a link to a fantastic blog post by DRocks himself. And that post was entitled How He Got His Job Working for Gary Vaynerchuk, because I think that there is so many valuable and essential lessons in there. So yes, this is a tech show, and Gary shared his views on 5G, AR, AI, etc. But one of the reasons I was so desperate to salvage this recording was the powerful stories that I hope will inspire others all over the world and help them do the same. Because if I take a step back, I can see how I followed in the footsteps of people like John White, Dustin McInnes, and Paul Drury. But much of my success was through helping and supporting others like Sarah Elkins, Heather Younger, and so many others. And I should also highlight that Sarah Elkins went a step further by taking all the contacts that she'd built up relationships with on LinkedIn and then invited them to connect beyond the keyboard at her no longer virtual conference. And it's gone on to be a huge success, and people have continued to travel from all over the world and meet face to face. And I got to meet some of the selfless people that had supported me over the years too. And the result of that is No Longer Virtual is preparing for its 4th year next year as it heads to Chicago. And once again, Online Connections will be flying from all over the world to share ideas and insights and how they can help and support each other. Proof once again, just like Gary Vee said, that it's giving back that is so much more important than taking. By following advice and supporting others, I'm sat here now talking to you as a full-time tech blog writer for hire that also helps businesses launch their own podcast. And like I said a few moments ago, David Rock's journey and his route to success is equally inspiring too. And having chatted with Gary Vee today, I learned that the shortcut mentality and worrying about others' judgment is holding people back. And what we actually need to be doing is putting patience and giving on a pedestal, not shortcuts and taking. And of course, DRocks taught me that nothing replaces hard work except pure execution, along of course with remaining helpful and humble. And at the end of every episode, I always say that technology works best when it brings people together. And I must admit, it felt kind of weird that the universe had put me, DRocks and Gary Vee in the same room. But then it occurred to me that it was actually technology that was responsible for 3 people who have never met backstage at the Wynn Hotel.
And when I ran into problems with my audio file and I thought it was all over, it was David Ralphs from the Join Up Dots podcast and Will Dell from UK Podcasters that helped me without hesitation. And I've never met either of those face to face either. But once again, technology brought us all together. And that is what it's all about. And that's the key message I always try and drive on this Daily Tech podcast. So forget about hype, status, online follower accounts. Today's podcast was just a meeting of two dudes, one from the US and one Brit guy, that see it as their job to tell their story. But this is where I also try and do something different. I want everybody listening to this podcast to share your story too. That's one of the reasons I created this platform. So my door is open to each and every one of you, wherever in the world you're listening to this podcast. And you can email me directly at techblogwriter@outlook.com. Visit my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. And if you prefer social media, then look for me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, by just looking for Neil C. Hughes. So I want to hear your stories, insights, experiences, your takeaways from today's podcasts, or feel free to send any questions my way. And equally, if you need my help with anything, you know where to find me. So I'll return tomorrow with another great guest, but a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.